It was the happiest day of my life. The sun bathed the outdoor venue in a golden glow as I stood at the altar, waiting for my bride-to-be. My heart raced, not just with anticipation, but with gratitude for having found love again after everything I'd been through. The whispers started before I even saw her. Guests exchanged glances, some audibly gasping. Then, from the end of the aisle, she appeared. Not my fiancée, but my ex-wife, Emily. She looked disheveled, her eyes puffy and red, mascara streaked down her cheeks. My pulse quickened for an entirely different reason now, anger and disbelief. Emily and I had been married for 5 years. Our love had once seemed unbreakable, but everything crumbled when I discovered her betrayal. She'd been having an affair with someone I had thought was my friend. The heartbreak had been unbearable, and despite her desperate pleas for forgiveness back then, I couldn't find it in myself to stay. Divorce was my only option. Now, as she stumbled down the aisle toward me, I was frozen. My fiancée, Claire, stood a few feet away, looking stunned. The guests murmured louder, and some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Emily's voice cracked as she cried out, "Wait! Please wait!" She reached the altar and dropped to her knees, clutching the hem of my jacket. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I made the biggest mistake of my life, and I can't let you go through with this. I still love you, and I know you still love me." The audacity left me speechless. Claire stepped closer, her face calm but her voice icy. "You're interrupting our wedding. Please leave before this gets any more humiliating for you." Emily ignored her, her tear-filled eyes fixed on me. "You can't marry her, Alex. You and I, we have history. We can make it work again. Please, just give me one more chance." "I'll do anything." The crowd was silent, all eyes on us. My emotions warred within me. Pain, anger, pity, but most of all, a fierce determination not to let the past ruin the future I had fought so hard to rebuild. I looked down at her, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Emily, I forgave you a long time ago, for my own peace, not for reconciliation. But that part of my life is over. I've moved on, and you need to as well. Please leave." Her sobs grew louder as she looked around, realizing the gravity of what she had done. Security gently escorted her away, and the murmurs of the crowd resumed. I turned to Claire, whose unwavering strength filled me with pride. She gave me a reassuring smile, and I knew I had made the right choice. The ceremony continued, albeit with an air of tension. But as I held Claire's hands and promised to love and cherish her for the rest of my life, the weight of the past finally lifted. This was my fresh start, and no ghost from my history could take it away as the ceremony drew to a close. Claire and I exchanged rings. The moment felt even more significant now, a declaration of our love and resilience in the face of unexpected chaos. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the applause that erupted was not just congratulatory. It felt like an affirmation of the journey we had taken to get here. The reception began shortly after. Despite the earlier drama, the atmosphere gradually lightened as guests enjoyed the music, food, and heartfelt speeches. Claire was radiant, her laughter filling the air as she moved between tables, greeting our friends and family. I couldn't take my eyes off her. She was my anchor, my joy, my future. But just as I was beginning to fully relax, I noticed a stir at the edge of the reception tent. Emily was back. This time, she stayed at a distance, lingering in the shadows near the entrance. She looked hesitant, almost as if she regretted her earlier outburst, but didn't know how to fix it. I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and pity. Part of me wanted to ignore her entirely, but I knew her presence could unsettle Claire or the guests. I excused myself from the conversation I was having and made my way toward Emily. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice low and calm. "You've already caused enough of a scene." She flinched, her gaze dropping to the ground. I wanted to apologize for everything, not just today, but for what I did to us. I was selfish, and I know I ruined the best thing I ever had. Seeing you happy with her, it hurts, but I deserve that pain." Her voice wavered, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had once loved. But that woman was a memory now, a chapter closed. "I accept your apology," I said, meaning it. "But you need to let this go. It's not fair to me, to Claire, or to yourself to keep holding on. You made your choice, and I've made mine." She nodded, tears streaming down her face, but this time she didn't argue. "You're right. I'm sorry for showing up. I won't bother you again." I watched her leave, a strange sense of closure settling over me. This time, I knew it was truly the end of that story. When I returned to the reception, Claire was waiting for me, concern etched on her face. "Is everything okay?" "It is now," I assured her, pulling her into my arms. "Let's not let anything else ruin this day." She smiled, her eyes filled with trust and love, and we rejoined the celebration. As the night wore on, surrounded by friends, family, and the woman who was now my wife, I realized that happiness wasn't just about finding love. It was about choosing it, nurturing it, and letting go of anything that threatened to take it away. Emily's chapter in my life was over, and Claire's had only just begun. For the first time in years, I felt whole. The reception was in full swing, laughter and music blending into a symphony of joy. Claire and I shared our first dance as husband and wife, her head resting against my chest as we swayed to the melody. The weight of the earlier incident faded into the background, replaced by the warmth of love and celebration. Later in the evening, as we mingled with guests, my best man, Josh, approached with a playful smirk. "Well, if nothing else, this is a wedding no one will forget," he quipped. I chuckled, shaking my head. Leave it to Emily to make an appearance at the worst possible moment. But honestly, I'm just glad it's over. Josh raised his glass in a mock toast to fresh starts and uninvited guests. "You handled it like a champ." Claire joined us, slipping her arm through mine. "Handled what like a champ?" she asked with a knowing smile. Josh grinned. "Oh, nothing. Just your husband's remarkable ability to stay composed while his past tried to crash his future." Claire laughed softly, her gaze meeting mine. "That's because Alex knows where his priorities are," she said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. As the night wore on, the dance floor became the center of attention. Guests of all ages joined in, their energy infectious. Claire pulled me into the middle of the crowd, her laughter lighting up the space. We danced with abandon, the earlier tension fully replaced by sheer joy. Toward the end of the evening, as the festivities wound down, Claire and I found a quiet moment together beneath the canopy of twinkling lights. She leaned against me, her voice soft but steady. I have to admit, when Emily showed up, part of me worried she might rattle you. I turned to her, surprised. "Rattle me?" "Claire, there's nothing she could say or do to change how I feel about you, or about us." Her eyes searched mine, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of her trust. "I believe you, and I'm proud of how you handled it. I know it couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," I admitted, "but nothing about my past could ever compare to what I have with you. You're my future, Claire, and nothing will ever get in the way of that." She smiled, and in that moment, the world seemed to stand still. The chaos of the day, the lingering shadows of old wounds, they all disappeared, leaving only the two of us and the promise we'd made to each other. As we left the venue that night, hand in hand, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Emily's interruption had been an unexpected challenge, but it had also solidified something I already knew. I had chosen the right person to stand by my side. With Claire, I wasn't just moving on. I was moving forward, building a life that was entirely my own. The past was behind me, where it belonged. And with Claire by my side, the future had never looked brighter as the car drove us toward our honeymoon suite. Claire rested her head on my shoulder, her hand nestled in mine. The city lights blurred into a tapestry of color outside the window, but all I could focus on was her. Her warmth, her presence, and the quiet strength she radiated. "You know," she said softly, breaking the silence. "This day didn't go exactly as planned, but I think it was perfect in its own way." I smiled, kissing the top of her head. "You mean because we survived the unexpected cameo from my past?" She laughed, a sound that always melted any lingering tension. "Well, that too, but mostly because we proved something today. Nothing can shake us, not even that kind of chaos. It just makes me even more certain about us." Her words sank in deeply. Claire wasn't just my wife now. She was my partner in every sense of the word. Life wasn't going to be perfect. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and even unexpected ghosts from the past. But we'd already faced one of those hurdles and come out stronger. As the car pulled up to the hotel, I stepped out first and offered her my hand. She took it, her smile lighting up the night. Inside, the staff greeted us warmly, congratulating us as they escorted us to the honeymoon suite. When we entered, Claire gasped. The room was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, candles flickering on every surface, and a bed strewn with rose petals. A bottle of champagne chilled in a silver bucket on a nearby table. "Wow," she whispered. "This is amazing." "You're amazing," I replied, pulling her close. "And you deserve nothing less." We spent the rest of the night basking in the glow of our first hours as husband and wife. We laughed, shared stories about the day, and even toasted to the unexpected drama, finding humor in what had once been tense. Emily's intrusion felt like a distant memory, a mere footnote in the larger story of our lives. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, waking us gently. Claire stretched beside me, her hair cascading over the pillows. She caught me watching her and grinned. "What?" she teased. "Admiring your wife?" "Always," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But especially today. Every day with you feels like the start of something incredible." She leaned in and kissed me, her touch soft yet full of promise. "That's because it is," she whispered, "and I can't wait to see where it takes us." As we embarked on our honeymoon later that day, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. From heartbreak and betrayal to finding love and building a future I could truly believe in. The road hadn't been easy, but standing there with Claire, I knew it had all been worth it. The past was behind us, and the future stretched out before us, bright and full of possibilities. Together, we were unstoppable, and this was only the beginning. Life carried on, and Claire and I settled into the comforting rhythm of married life. The letter from Emily, though initially unsettling, had ultimately served as a final punctuation mark to a chapter long closed. I stored it away in a box of old documents, more out of a sense of closure than sentimentality, and didn't think much about it afterward. Claire and I were too busy building our future to dwell on the past. Weeks turned into months, and soon the memory of our wedding day, the joy, the drama, and the resolution, was something we spoke of only in passing, usually with a laugh. Claire often joked about how we could probably sell the story as a plot for a romantic drama. "You'd come out looking like a hero," she'd say with a teasing smile. And Emily, well, she'd certainly make for an interesting antagonist. One evening, as we sat on the back porch of our new home, watching the stars twinkle against the night sky, Claire leaned her head on my shoulder. "I was thinking," she began, her voice soft, "about everything we've been through to get here. It makes me so grateful for what we have." I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer. "Me too. I've learned to appreciate how every step, even the painful ones, brought us here. If I had to go through it all again to end up with you, I wouldn't change a thing." She smiled, but there was a thoughtful look in her eyes. "You're stronger than you realize, Alex. Not everyone can let go of the past the way you have." Her words stayed with me long after we'd gone to bed that night. It wasn't just about letting go, I realized. It was about choosing to build something better. Claire had been my partner in that choice, my steady anchor in the midst of uncertainty. A few months later, we got news that would change everything. Claire had been feeling off for weeks, and after some gentle nudging from me, she took a pregnancy test. When the result came back positive, we were both overwhelmed with joy and disbelief. The idea of becoming parents filled us with equal parts excitement and nervousness. We spent countless hours discussing baby names, painting the nursery, and imagining what life would be like with a little one running around. It felt like the final piece of the puzzle, the ultimate symbol of the life we were building together. During one of our late-night talks, Claire reached out and took my hand. Do you ever think about how different things could have been if Emily hadn't cheated, or if you decided to stay? I paused, considering her question. I think about it sometimes, I admitted, but not with regret. If things had gone differently, I wouldn't have met you. And this, us, our family, this is what I was meant for. Everything else was just a stepping stone to get here. Her eyes glistened with emotion as she smiled. I feel the same way. I'm so glad you're mine. As the months passed and Claire's belly grew, we focused entirely on the new chapter ahead. By the time our son was born, the past felt like a distant memory. Holding him in my arms for the first time, I was overwhelmed by a sense of completeness I hadn't known was possible. The years rolled on, and our family grew in love and happiness. Emily never resurfaced, and the wounds she'd left behind continued to fade, replaced by the warmth of the life Claire and I had built together. Looking back, I realized that the heartbreak I had once thought would break me had only made me stronger, preparing me for a future filled with the kind of love I never thought I'd deserve. Claire was my rock, my partner, and the love of my life. Together, we had turned the page, leaving behind a story of pain and betrayal and writing a new one filled with hope, resilience, and a love that would endure for a lifetime. Years passed, and our little family blossomed. Our son, Liam, grew into a curious and spirited boy, his laughter filling every corner of our home. Watching him discover the world was a daily reminder of how far I had come. The pain of the past was so distant now that it felt like someone else's story, a life I had once lived but no longer recognized as my own. Claire and I often spoke about the importance of honesty and trust, values we wanted to instill in Liam. Our journey had taught us the fragility of relationships and the strength that could be found in rebuilding. We wanted Liam to grow up knowing the power of forgiveness, but also the importance of self-respect. One autumn afternoon, as I played catch with Liam in the backyard, Claire sat on the porch with a cup of tea, her hands resting on her now slightly rounded belly. She was pregnant again, and the news had brought us even closer. We were ready to expand our family and embrace the chaos that came with raising another child. "Dad, catch!" Liam shouted, breaking my reverie. I caught the ball and threw it back, marveling at how much he'd grown. He was a mirror of Claire in many ways, confident, kind, and endlessly curious. As we played, Claire called out, "Dinner's almost ready, you too. Come wash up soon." I jogged over to her, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "How are you feeling?" "Better now that you're here," she said, her smile warm. "I think this one's going to be a kicker, though. Keeps me up half the night." I placed a hand on her belly, feeling a faint movement beneath my palm. Already making their presence known, I said with a chuckle, "Just like their brother." Claire tilted her head, studying me. "You seem extra reflective today. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, then shrugged, just thinking about how lucky I am. There was a time I never thought I'd have this. A family, a future, real happiness. You made it all possible. She reached out, taking my hand in hers. "You give me too much credit, Alex. You chose this life just as much as I did, and I'm so glad you did." Her words stayed with me long after dinner that evening. As I tucked Liam into bed, he asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Dad, were you always happy?" I sat down beside him, ruffling his hair. "Not always, buddy. But happiness is something you build. And I'm the happiest I've ever been now because I have you, your mom, and soon your little brother or sister. Liam smiled, seemingly satisfied with my answer, and drifted off to sleep. I stayed by his side for a while, marveling at how far life had brought me. Later that night, as Claire and I lay in bed, I whispered, "Thank you." She turned to me, her brow furrowing. For what? For being my second chance. For believing in me. For loving me. She smiled, her hand finding mine in the dark. I didn't give you a second chance, Alex. You gave it to yourself. And I'll love you for the rest of my life for choosing me. In that moment, I knew there was nothing more I could ask for. My life was full, my heart was whole, and the future was ours to write. Together, Claire and I had turned a broken beginning into a love story that would last forever.